just came home from a day of anesthesiology, and I just wanted to share a story about an experience I had in the hospital. So during anesthesiology, what the schedule looks like in the day is you go in at 7 a.m., you have morning conference. After conference, residents prep the OR for the operations. The operations ranges from 1 hour to 8 hours or longer, depending on what type of surgery it is. And during surgeries or in between the surgeries, anesthesiology residents can go take breaks. And usually the residents are paired with an attending. So as a medical student, I'd be following a resident who works with and under an attending. So after the lunch break, I went back to the OR, during which I found the original attending that I was working under was transitioning care to a certified nurse anesthesiologist. A certified nurse anesthesiologist can also help out with the whole anesthesia process. And I'll just call them CNA from now. So after the attending left, the CNA started asking me open-ended questions right off the bat about what I was doing here, and it seemed kind of aggressive, or just in a way where I felt like he was trying to pimp me, but not sure. But his questions were so open-ended, I really wasn't sure what he was trying to ask me. He also asked me what I was doing here, and I was just confused. So I guess I tried to catch him up. I told him I was working under the attending, and I went on lunch break and I just came back. At this point, the surgery was towards its end, and so we were about to reverse the anesthetics. This was my second week, and I've gotten used to the process of what you do when the patient wakes up. I started helping out with the reversal process in terms of what medical students usually do, such as taking down the sterile drapes, returning the patient's gowns and putting her clothes back on, making sure the patient doesn't hurt herself. So standing next to the patient, stabilizing her. And so just as any other time, I was standing next to the patient when I saw the surgeon resident about to bring in the bed. So normally when the bed comes, you can unbuckle the patient's belt because you're going to be transferring the patient to the bed. The belt is to make sure the patient doesn't fall while she's under anesthesia. And so I started unbuckling the patient's bed, and just as I started, knowing that I will be right next to the patient, making sure that she's not going to fall, the nurse technician, she was off in the corner, she just lightly mentioned, not to do that until the bed was immediately in. I feel like it wasn't an attack, it was just a friendly reminder, and I knew that as well. But when the nurse said something, this somehow I felt like unlocked something in the CNA, and he started lecturing me nonstop, telling me not to do anything until I asked him, and telling me that students want to help, but a lot of times they just make things worse. And of course, after it was done, I asked him if I should take the warmer off, and for which he impatiently said, "No, why would you do that?" And then he proceeded to lecture me to ask him whether or not I can do anything. And a lot of anesthesiologists have their own personalized order, and so even if you follow one anesthesiologist perfectly, if a next one comes in, they might want you to do something different, It's like, fine, this person doesn't want to take the warmer off until after the patient wakes up. He just started lecturing me out of nowhere, and I felt a bit unwarranted because, first of all, I did not do anything that was life-threatening to the patient. Secondly, I did ask the CNA multiple times about everything regarding the patient before I did it. Thirdly, when I do ask a question, the CNA makes me feel as if I don't know anything. So it was just frustrating to see someone wanting you to ask more questions, but when you do ask questions, making you feel inadequate. That what makes it more frustrating was while he was lecturing me and telling me all of this, while we were leaving the room, he was the one who forgot to unplug the oxygen mask off the machine. And this caused the patient's head to be stretched because the mask was still attached to the machine as the bed was moving towards the door. And, all of this just reminds me of what one of the residents told me. And what she told me was that how many times or how a way a person talks to you or treats you reflects more of himself and how he feels about himself and others than of the person he or she's even talking to. And so looking back, I can see that the CNA himself was flustered, most likely, and as he was brought into the middle of an operation and probably did not feel entirely comfortable transitioning patients, and that caused him to be anxious, and even anxious about me doing normal operational things. Furthermore, I also felt that the CNA probably had a distorted relationship with the physicians as well. I've noticed this especially in anesthesiology, and I'm not sure if this is only at my hospital or a phenomenon in other places too. There's an odd tension that I feel between anesthesiologists, surgeons, and CNAs. I feel as though the laws on practicing privileges and autonomy varies across states between anesthesiologists and CNAs, and this causes a need to overcompensate and establish one's legitimacy and authority among the CNA group and the anesthesiologists as well. The other thing that I get a sense of is that anesthesiologists always have a tendency to emphasize how important their role is, as I have not experienced this phenomenon in any other specialty I've come across. There's ophthalmologists or family physicians. I know without saying that all of these specialties are important, but when I rotated under those fields, I never got a sense that physicians were banging me over the head telling me how important their role is and how needed they are and how things won't function if they weren't there. And it's just an interesting observation I've made. I'm not sure if this, again, happens only at my hospital or if it occurs elsewhere as well. It just seems to me that anesthesiologists need to emphasize, one, difference from the CNAs, and two, their equality in terms of importance and significance to surgeons. The other thing I also learned from this is that a way a person communicates, and that includes teaching, is so important. And it also touches on communicating with patients as well, because that first impression and that first way of communicating with someone, it can open up a relationship, open up learning and question asking, and create a wonderful environment and relationship between two people, whether it be a doctor or a patient, or between a resident and attending. Just a safe environment where you can learn. Or it can totally be the opposite, shut down that relationship and cause the student or the patient not to want to ask any questions out of fear of seeming stupid or out of fear of not wanting to bother the other person. On the receiving end, I can see good examples and bad examples. I can see how that first interaction really sets the stage of whether or not that person's going to want to continue learning from you and asking questions. Because no matter how good of a teacher you are or how good of a physician you are, if you're not able to establish that rapport and relationship with someone else, that person's not going to want to learn from you. That person's not going to want to listen to you as a student. And as a patient, they might not be able to adhere or want to be on a team with you in terms of keeping up with their treatments and medication. So this was just a story I wanted to share, and it's something small, it's not a big deal, but I just wanted to talk about it because it is frustrating. Just having that bad interaction with someone can just, affect me. I'm a pretty sensitive person, I guess. But it was just something I observed, and I'm sure this happens a lot as a third year. You're working with a bunch of different people. But yeah, it would be wonderful to hear what your experiences are if you guys are third year medical students or fourth year medical students, and how you've dealt with it. I'm not really sure yet what the best way of dealing with poor communication or different personalities is. But if you guys have recommendations or stories about how you guys deal with that, it would help me out so much. And thank you for listening to me. I'm so grateful to be able to share this, and love you guys.